In the early morning, as the sun first paints the horizon with gold, we often feel our smallness before the vast universe and the unpredictable turns of life. It is in those moments that the question becomes pressing. How can we stand firm, unshaken by the whirlwind of fate? Stoicism, born in the public squares of ancient Greece, offered a clear path, not to resist the storm, but to train the soul strong enough to walk through it. This philosophy teaches that the waves are not in our control, but how we steer before the waves is entirely ours. True freedom is not about what life gives us, but about how we choose to respond. Through daily practice, through stripping away fear and desire, one can find within the soul a solid ground, where storms are no longer sentences, but lessons and trials. Epictetus, once a slave, embodied the strength of Stoicism. Chains could bind his body, but no power could enslave a mind trained in reason and virtue. He taught that it is not events themselves that cause suffering, but the way we perceive them. Change your perspective, and you change your destiny. A man may be stripped of outward freedom, yet if he retains the power to choose his response, he is freer than kings consumed by fear of losing their throne. In Epictetus's lesson, true freedom is an unconquerable spirit, the ability to smile calmly even when life hurls its harshest blows. Seneca, a Roman statesman surrounded by wealth, power, and danger, also chose Stoicism as his compass. He warned that people waste their lives worrying about the future and regretting the past, only to lose the present, the only place where life truly exists. He taught that one must live each day fully, as if it were the last, refusing to let fear or ambition cloud the vision. For Seneca, wealth was not in overflowing riches, but in a soul content and at peace. When greed is restrained and fear is illuminated by reason, people become freer, lighter, and steadier in the face of life's sudden storms. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, proved that Stoicism could walk hand in hand with the heaviest of responsibilities. Amid endless wars, tangled politics, and devastating plagues, he preserved his serenity by constantly conversing with himself through pages of philosophical reflection. He reminded himself, one cannot avoid insult, betrayal, or hardship, but one can always choose not to let the soul be stained by hatred or despair. That self-mastery transformed Marcus from a mere ruler into a symbol of wisdom and resolve, a man who could sit upon the throne without letting the throne rule his soul. Stoicism does not promise an easy life. It promises the strength to walk through a hard life with head held high. It teaches that pain is a stern teacher, that loss is a trial, and that storms reveal our true character. By accepting what lies beyond our reach and focusing our energy on what lies within it, we are no longer torn apart by disappointment or resentment. With a soul made clear and steadfast, we become like an ancient tree in the storm. It may sway, it may lose branches, but its roots remain deep, unshakable. And in that steadfastness, we discover true freedom, not freedom given by circumstance, but freedom born from a heart trained in the wisdom of Stoicism. When stepping onto the Stoic path, one learns that acceptance is the first step towards strength. Life's storms do not choose us, but we always have the power to choose our attitude toward them. Just as a boat cannot calm the sea, but can keep its rudder steady, so too can we. Though we cannot escape illness, betrayal, or death, we can choose to meet them with calmness. Acceptance is not surrender. It is facing reality without being haunted by what cannot be changed. And when the mind is freed from such torment, it grows lighter, clearer, and ready to focus on what truly belongs to us. That is the beginning of freedom, and the beginning of the inner strength that keeps us standing tall no matter how fierce life's storms may be. Stoicism also teaches us to distinguish clearly between what lies within our control and what lies beyond it. To direct our energy toward what we can change is wisdom. To waste it blaming what we cannot change is folly. When we devote our time to cultivating virtue, sharpening reason, and training patience, we are laying the foundation of an unshakable inner life. But when we cling to what is not ours, praise, recognition, fragile wealth, we enslave ourselves. Epictetus affirmed, "Whoever learns to direct effort rightly ceases to be a victim of fate." In that moment, a person becomes truly free, not because they control everything, but because they know precisely the boundaries of their power. In a world full of temptation, Stoicism reminds us that unbridled desire is an invisible chain that drags us away from freedom. Everyone wants more money, more status, more admiration. Yet the more we crave, the more anxious we become, forever fearing loss or insufficiency. The Stoic does not deny the joy that material goods can bring, but they see them as temporary tools, not ultimate ends. Seneca stressed that wealth does not make a person noble, only virtue can. When we learn to be content with what is necessary and stop being led by endless ambition, our souls grow lighter. And in that simplicity, we discover freedom, a richness of spirit that no external force can take away. Stoicism is also the art of mastering emotions. Anger, fear, and sorrow can all enslave us if we let them rule. The Stoic does not deny emotion, but trains not to be controlled by it. They see emotions as passing clouds, not to be allowed to cover the sky of reason. When anger comes, they observe rather than explode. When sorrow lingers, they seek meaning rather than despair. True freedom arises when we no longer react by impulse, but by reason. That is the moment we stop being puppets, pulled by circumstance, and begin to take the helm of our own lives. This strength allows us to walk through life's storms without losing balance in the soul. And finally, Stoicism teaches that freedom is not withdrawal from the world, but the ability to live in it while keeping one's integrity. Marcus Aurelius embodied this spirit, both emperor of Rome and philosopher of a clear heart. He did not abandon responsibility, but bore it with composure. In every page of Meditations, he reminded himself, "No storm outside can stain the soul unless we permit it." Thus he stood firm amid political chaos and human suffering. His life is powerful proof that Stoicism is not the philosophy of hermits hiding from life, but the philosophy of those who engage with it, those who need inner strength to face trials and to live nobly in the very heart of the storm. When speaking of freedom, Stoicism does not stop at the individual, but extends to the freedom of the community. A society can only endure when each individual learns self-mastery rather than letting emotions and ambition dominate the collective. When people uphold reason and virtue, they are not easily swept into mobs of anger, nor seduced by the hollow promises of power. A Stoic community places justice and reason above selfishness, acting not for fleeting gain, but for lasting stability. Throughout history, many civilizations collapsed because both rulers and citizens alike forgot this lesson. That is why Stoicism not only saves a soul, but can preserve an entire culture from self-destruction. Stoicism also teaches us to face death with calm. For only by accepting death do we truly learn how to live. Most people spend life in fear, avoidance, treating death as an enemy. The Stoic sees it as a natural part of existence. Epictetus advised, "Live each day as if it were your last," for that awareness allows us to seize each moment fully. Death is not an ending, but a reminder of life's preciousness. When people no longer fear death, they become braver, more serene, and freer. That freedom is not given by anyone, nor can it be taken away. It arises from a soul reconciled with the unchanging law of life. The freedom Stoicism points to also lies in escaping the grip of public opinion. People are often chained by the gaze of others, happy when praised, miserable when criticized. Yet public opinion is only an echo, unable to define the worth of a human life. The Stoic chooses not to chase outside approval, but to measure life by virtue and reason. In this way, praise does not make us arrogant, and criticism does not break us. We become like a mountain standing tall. Storms may lash its sides, but they cannot erode its solid core. This is a special kind of freedom. Freedom from the invisible chains of opinion, allowing us to live authentically and wholeheartedly as ourselves. Stoicism also warns us about time, the most precious asset, yet the most easily wasted. Seneca said, "Life is not short. It is people who squander it." We worry about the future, regret the past, and neglect the present, the only place where life truly exists. The Stoic reminds us to treat time as a gift, for each moment passing will never return. When we master how we spend our time, we master life itself. Living fully in the present releases us from regret and anxiety, turning each day into a steady step on the path of virtue. And that becomes the foundation of inner freedom, not dependent on the length of years, but found in the depth of each lived moment. Stoicism also teaches us to face loss in order to grow. No one escapes separation, failure, or the passing of loved ones. Such blows can easily drown us in despair. But the Stoic learns to accept loss as an inevitable part of the journey. They do not deny pain, but neither do they allow it to become shackles. Through mindful reflection, they transform loss into an opportunity to grow, to cherish what remains, and to deepen compassion. Freedom here is not indifference, but the ability to walk through sorrow while keeping the light alive in the soul. When we no longer fear loss, we become stronger, for our roots have sunk deep into the soil of acceptance and virtue. Stoicism also teaches that true freedom comes from living a simple life, unenslaved by extravagant possessions. People often equate wealth with freedom, yet the richer we become, the more we fear loss, and the more we worry about maintaining what we have. The Stoic chooses the opposite path, reducing desires to lighten the soul. A modest meal enjoyed in peace is far more valuable than a lavish feast filled with anxiety. When we know contentment, we are no longer controlled by material things, but instead use them as tools to serve virtue and reason. This simplicity does not make life impoverished. It enriches it, turning even the smallest moments into sources of joy. In simplicity, one discovers a firm freedom, the freedom to break free from dependency on things that are fleeting, fragile, and easily lost. Stoicism also warns of the traps of power. Many assume that power brings freedom, yet it often becomes an invisible chain, binding the soul in fear and doubt. Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor, demonstrated otherwise. He bore the responsibility of ruling an entire empire, yet in his personal writings, he focused solely on keeping his mind pure, living righteously, and staying humble. For him, the throne was not an end, but a test of character. The Stoic does not refuse responsibility, but they do not allow power to dominate the soul. True freedom, therefore, does not lie in ruling over others, but in refusing to let power and ambition rule oneself. Another lesson from Stoicism is the acceptance of the ever-changing nature of all things. Nothing stands still. Everything flows. Seasons follow seasons. Generations follow generations. Prosperity and decline alternate like an endless river. People often suffer by clinging to the past or fearing what is to come. But Stoicism teaches that change is not an enemy. It is the essence of nature. A wilting flower makes way for seeds to sprout. An ending opens the path for a new beginning. When we accept change as part of the universe, we free ourselves from regret and fear. This freedom arises from the ability to live fully in the present, harmonizing with the flow rather than resisting it. In this harmony, we maintain our true nature, neither swept away nor distorted. Stoicism also teaches letting go of the need to control others. Much suffering arises when we try to change how people think, how they act, or to make them conform to our expectations. Yet each person is their own world, shaped by circumstances and personal choices. The Stoic understands that we cannot force others. We can only master our own reactions. By relinquishing the need to control, we free ourselves from disappointment and anger. Instead of imposing, they choose understanding and compassion, allowing love and respect to be genuine, untainted by possession or control. In these relationships, one finds a different kind of freedom, the freedom of the heart, unbound by the pressures of ownership. Finally, Stoicism emphasizes that true freedom does not depend on the stability of external events. History has witnessed empires rise and fall, dynasties ascend and collapse. If our freedom is tied to such stability, we can never fully possess it. The Stoic find support elsewhere, within a trained inner self. When society plunges into chaos, when fate shifts unpredictably, they maintain virtue and reason, an inviolable fortress. They do not allow themselves to be swept away by panic, for they understand that great upheavals are but a part of the vast universe. True freedom is maintaining that inner calm, a form of enduring strength beyond the rise and fall of the world, a quiet yet unwavering light guiding one through the storm. Stoicism also teaches us to break free from the trap of comparison, a habit that has kept countless people living in lifelong dissatisfaction. When we look upward, we feel inferior and suffer. When we look downward, we grow arrogant and prideful. Both are invisible chains that bind the soul. The Stoic chooses a different path. They compare only their present self with who they were yesterday. The only measure is inner progress, not the judgment of others. When we stop comparing, we begin to live authentically according to our own abilities and virtues, no longer driven by the endless race of competition. This is the moment we become truly free, because our value is no longer defined by others, but by our own character and reason. An essential art of Stoicism is silence and attentive listening. In a noisy world where everyone wants to speak, the Stoic chooses to pause, to observe, and to listen deeply. They understand that many arguments only fuel resentment, while silence allows reason to speak. Silence is not weakness. It is a manifestation of inner strength, the ability to restrain impulsive instincts. When we listen more, we see the essence of situations clearly, understand others' motives, and make wiser, fairer decisions. Freedom here is not separation from life, but self-mastery, liberation from the influence of anger and desire. It is in silence that we find enduring and lucid freedom. Stoicism also teaches us to turn adversity into an opportunity for growth. Instead of complaining when faced with difficulties, the Stoic sees them as a forge for strengthening the will. An illness does not bring despair. It becomes a chance to cultivate patience. A failure does not topple them. It is a lesson for growth. For the Stoic, challenges are not sentences, but opportunities to prove inner strength. When the mind shifts perspective, Adversity is no longer a chain, but becomes wings. This is the practical optimism Stoicism offers humanity, a way of seeing that allows one to face hardship without fear, using hardship itself as a path forward. In the process, freedom emerges, freedom from fear, from victimhood, and from dependence on fortune. Connection with nature is also a source of Stoic freedom. People often forget that they are a small part of the vast universe, clinging instead to the illusion of controlling everything. The Stoic finds peace in aligning with nature, gazing at the stars to feel the infinite, listening to the wind to remember change, observing rivers to learn the flow of life. In this connection, they recognize that an inflated ego is mere illusion. By letting go of omnipotent ambitions, they discover simplicity and serenity. Freedom is no longer a race for acquisition, but the ability to live in rhythm with the universe. In harmony with earth, sky, water, and wind, one experiences profound freedom, the freedom of someone who knows they belong to the whole. Stoicism also teaches us to focus on duty rather than desire. People often chase what they think will bring happiness, money, fame, admiration. Yet the more they chase, the more they become enslaved, because such pleasures are fleeting and fragile. The Stoic chooses duty, fulfilling roles as a parent, a child, a citizen, a soldier. When living for duty, one is no longer controlled by fleeting desires, but guided by responsibility and reason. This is the source of deep freedom, liberation from the slavery of appetite, and finding meaning in purposeful action. When duty becomes a guiding light, we move steadily, unshaken by illusions, finding peace in every right action. Stoicism reminds us that emotions should not dominate reason. Rather than letting fear, anger, or desire control us, Stoics learn to observe them as natural phenomena, coming and going, not defining who we are. When we understand that emotions are merely ripples on the surface of a still lake, we can maintain composure amid life's storms. Inner freedom begins with the ability to master emotions, resisting external influences and avoiding impulsive reactions to circumstances. This is the quiet strength that Stoic philosophy grants to those who dare to train the soul. The Stoic views death as a natural part of life's cycle, neither fearing nor denying it. Awareness of life's finitude heightens the value of every present moment, making each action and thought more precious. When we no longer fear the end, we are free to live fully in the present, unburdened by meaningless concerns. Facing death with equanimity is not resignation. It is understanding the meaning of life, and from this understanding, learning to choose what truly matters. The power of Stoicism also lies in learning forgiveness and letting go. Hatred, envy, and resentment only weigh down the soul, limiting freedom and happiness. The Stoic does not seek revenge, but understands that the actions of others reflect themselves, not our worth. Letting go is not weakness. It is a demonstration of wisdom and courage, allowing one to live peacefully and generously. In forgiveness, we find liberation from the chains of the past and open a path to inner freedom. Stoic philosophy also teaches introspection and continuous self-discipline. The world outside is always changing, but inner strength is the one thing we can control. The Stoic does not escape society, but chooses to improve themselves, refining every action and thought. When we master ourselves, life becomes steadier, unaffected by injustice or chaos. True freedom lies in the balance between reason and emotion, action and reflection, self and society. Finally, Stoicism shows that true freedom is the result of self-mastery, understanding, and acceptance. when we no longer let desires, fears, or others' opinions govern us. When we live in harmony with nature, cherish each moment, and fulfill our duties, freedom emerges like a quiet light within the soul. It is not indulgence, but the ability to stand firm amid any storm, maintain a serene mind, and walk through life with courage and wisdom. This is the eternal gift that Stoic philosophy offers to those who dare to cultivate themselves.